lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Welcome to this year's 10th Annual African Black History Community Unity Awareness Program. Where this year's theme is organizing and uniting our black community. The reason we put these programs on every year is for the purpose of educating and bringing awareness to our community in terms of our history, our illustrious heritage, our black African heritage.
Good evening, family.
Good evening. Good evening.
Happy Black History Month.
Happy Black Day.
Happy Black Every Day. That's what I'm talking about. So it is truly indeed my honor to be here with all of you today as we celebrate the contributions of people of African descent that they have made in this great country, and recognizing the fact that it is a great country partially and mainly because of our people's contribution. It's important to be proud of our history. It's important to be proud of our past. But it's also important not to forget the travesties that have happened to us so that we, again, don't face them. So we have tonight a group of outstanding minds that are going to come before you and share their own personal stories. As part of their personal stories, you will see how this is living history and how their current contributions are paving a way to preserve and protect the rights that sometimes many of us take for granted that our forefathers who've come before us sacrificed for. And to understand the importance of why we need our younger generations to be ready to assume the mantle and accept the torch that's been passed on to us. Amen. As I stand here before you, I am the first African-American male freeholder director in the history of the county of Passaic. And I don't say it for an applause, and actually what I want everyone to say is, how can that possibly be? Our county was founded almost 180 years ago. The fact that we still have first is amazing. There's no reason in the world that I should be the first. I should not be the first. And it is my responsibility to ensure that I'm definitely not the last. This evening's program, and I believe that Mr. Dine, I want to thank him so much for hosting this and putting it together each and every year. That's now celebrating a decade in existence. He named it the African Black History Community Unity Awareness. I want to focus on that just a little bit. African Black History Community Unity Awareness. The reason why I wanted to focus on just the title, when we look at it, is that it's important to understand that all of us are descendants of the motherland of Africa. Each and every person sitting here in this room is the descendant of the motherland of Africa, including my good friends and reporters over here from The Record. You too, yes. You, my friend, are a descendant of Africa. It's also important to understand the fact that the thing that unifies us in this country is our color. Despite the fact that there may be several shades and variations, we are still all black. Whether or not we were Africans, Caribbeans, born in America, we still share the fact that we are black. And the reason why I wanted to point this out is because our first speaker for this evening is my brother. We have the privilege of serving together on the Passaic County Board of Chosen Freeholders. He himself is the first Dominican to ever serve on the Board of Chosen Freeholders, and is the first Dominican to ever serve as director on the Board of Chosen Freeholders. But despite the fact that we recognize his Dominican heritage, the fact that we share the same melanin, and in the winter times he's even darker than I am. I gotta wait till the summer till I get my full melanin. I gotta wait for the summer to get my full melanin. But the fact that he understands that even though he speaks another language in addition to English, that we come from the same place and that our descendants come from the same place. He just so happened to be dropped off a little bit earlier than I was. And he's fully aware of that. And he understands the fact that in order for us to really unite and to move forward as a community, we have to focus on the things that binds us together and not the things that separates us. We have to focus on the things that are important for us to take the next steps in life for our children. Even though they consider people of color minorities in America, there are more people of color than there are people not of color in America. And when we recognize the fact that whether you're black, African American, African, Caribbean, West Indian, Dominican, Latino, Hispanic, whatever you want to call it, we are all kin. We are related. We are family. And in order for us to truly be able to step forward and to speak with a unified voice and assume the mantle that has been placed before us, we first must come together. And that starts with the recognition that we are of one family, that we are of one descent, and that we are unified in our struggle for freedom and justice in the United States of America. So it gives me great honor to introduce my good friend and colleague on the Passaic County Freeholder Board, Freeholder Hector Lora, from very own city of Passaic.
I'll share with you, I was excited about coming down and sharing a little bit, especially when the host had explained to me what he wanted me to touch upon, which I think is an important topic because as you look at the title of the event today, African Black History, Community, Unity, Awareness. I really focused on the unity. I really concentrated and I share with you guys that I prayed a bit on that and asked what keeps us from being united. Now, I want to say this because I truly believe it. Ignorance divides us more than anything else. It is ignorance. It is the lack of self-awareness or sometimes the laziness to not look into our culture. And Mr. Dye had asked me to touch a little bit upon African descent or the heritage of the Latino community as it relates to Africa and obviously being black. This isn't an easy topic because it's an interesting thing that occurs. It's sometimes tough enough to educate individuals on what it is to be Hispanic or Latino or Spanish. So I ask you to be patient with me as I try to break this down and then go into that topic. And I promise I'm going to be brief because as I shared with Mr. Dye earlier on, today is Friday and I'm supposed to be in church, but I got a little bit of a freedom to come out and speak and then I have to run down there. So more times than not, when you encounter someone who is either Dominican or Puerto Rican or Mexican or from any of the Latino or Hispanic countries, people refer to them as being Spanish. Now, let me clarify this. Spanish is a language. It refers to a country, but it's a language. To try to help you relate a little bit, and I share with you, I didn't always understand the distinction until I had to study. It would be like me asking you, what language do you speak? And you say, I speak English. So I would say, then you're English. Right? And you would say, no, I'm not from Britain, I'm American. But you speak English. It's not necessarily your nationality. That happens a lot to people who speak Spanish and call Spanish. Well, we're not. Unless you're from Spain, you're not. So then you get these two other distinctions there, I think ethnonyms, as they're referred to, whereas Latino and Hispanic American or Hispanic. Hispanic refers to anyone from a country where they speak Spanish. So that would include your South Central America and the Caribbean, your Puerto Rican, your Cuban, your Dominican, your Mexican, Bolivian, Colombian, all of those. And then you have your Latino American, or Latinos, which refer to individuals who are from these regions but don't necessarily speak Spanish, like people from Brazil. They're Latinos, but they don't speak Spanish. Having this history, or just this brief information, helps you to understand the different distinctions, because I would say that the Latino Hispanic community has a lot in common with those who are of African descent or those who come from Africa. Outside of America, we get distinguished by our countries. So outside America, you would know that a Colombian is Colombian specifically, a Peruvian is Peruvian, a Dominican is Dominican from the Dominican Republic. But here we get lumped into one group. Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish. When my wife's father is here, he is seen as black or African American, but he's Nigerian. So if you tell him you're just from Africa, he's going to be very specific. I'm Nigerian, that's my country. He has a very specific language, right? Because Africa is a continent and it's divided into different countries. So a little brief information helped me to understand what the connection is. For many of us who come from Latino or Hispanic background, we sort of receive this history, this belief that those who came from Spain, the explorers, or as many would refer to as the colonizers, when they came into these countries, they found the indigenous people, the Indians, and they sort of had relationships with them. There was war, there was mix, and then Latinos or Hispanics are somehow the descendants of these Europeans and the indigenous people. A lot of times, a very significant portion of our history is left out. Yeah. What is left out is that these individuals actually brought slaves to Latino and Hispanic countries before they made it to North America. And our race, our history, is forever connected. So in the Dominican Republic, what you'll find is individuals of the many different shades, like our director had highlighted, individuals who are extremely dark, those who are sort of a little bit lighter, and those who are white in the Dominican Republic. Much like in America, where you'll find individuals who are white, who are Indian, who are black, when you get to Santo Domingo or Puerto Rico or any of these islands, you'll find these same labels just by a different language. You'll find the negro, which is black, or the indio, which is a little bit of lighter color, and los blancos. This is extremely important because what happens is the same issues that you find here in America, you'll find in Latino and Hispanic countries. You'll find this disparity, this issue where those of color are disproportionately incarcerated for similar crimes as those who do not have color. You'll find that those of color find themselves in more impoverished situations with less opportunities for education. So there is that understanding that there's issues of race in different countries, in Latino countries and Hispanic countries, but something happens when the Latino and the Hispanic comes to America. Somehow this label of being negro or being black in Spanish, somehow that changes. And now you're just lumped into this group of Hispanic and Latino, as if there is no connection with those who are black in America. And there's this division that occurs between the groups. And this is important because this issue of unity goes to the heart of the problems that we have in our community. Because we see these divisions, we don't immediately rise up to fight with each other when we're dealing with the same issues. We start saying this is not necessarily a problem of my people, but I hope it goes well with your people. And this is a problem, a major problem for us, because we'll never advance. You know, as I mentioned, ignorance keeps us divided more than anything else, and it's extremely important to know our history and to know black history in America, because there is no American future without understanding black history and the contributions of it. But just as important is the understanding of how we are connected. Our director eloquently and extremely articulately put that we all come from Africa. That's important. But understanding the deep and important connections will keep us united so that we can move our people forward. So I want to give a couple of examples really briefly. It's interesting that for other groups, and I'll give an example, such as if an individual is of Jewish background, and there is hardship going on with individuals who are Jewish in Russia, they will feel that pain. There will be a concern for their people, even though they're not American. There's an issue going on with my people in Russia or in Europe. So the community feels that as a whole and says, how can we get together to help our people? I think sometimes we lack that here, where we'll see sort of intolerance or injustice going on with, let's say, a group of individuals in a Caribbean island, those who are black race or black color or of African descent, and we don't have that connection because we're so focused on people here. And that's important to understand, because until we know how connected we are, how closely related we are, we'll never come together to fight for similar issues. You know, I was thinking about this. I don't know if any of you got to see the movie Race with Jesse Owens. I went to go see it, and something struck me about that movie as I was watching it. When they went over to Germany for the Olympics, right? There was a part where they wanted to keep out two of the Jewish runners, right? And Jesse Owens in the movie is depicted as saying, I won't run if you're going to discriminate against them. And there was this camaraderie, this sort of relationship between both groups. And it really struck me because I started thinking about the civil rights movement and how it was sort of taught to me, and seeing the marches that occurred with individuals of different races, whether they were Indian, African American or black, whether they were Jewish, white, Catholic, Protestant, or different religions. People came together to fight for injustice. And I realized something, when a group of people knows who they are, and they're united and proud of who they are, then they can join with other groups together to fight effectively against injustice. But when a people don't understand who they are, they get so bogged down with infighting, with division, with I'm this black, or you're that black, you're Jamaican, so you're not really black like me, or you're Dominican and you're not black like me, and you're Puerto Rican. We're so busy fighting each other that we can't stand up as one people and unite with other people to fight against injustice as a whole. So that got me thinking a lot about my own heritage and my own family, and thinking the importance and the gratitude that I have with my parents that instilled in me a proper sort of respect and understanding of our heritage and our race. I talked briefly about the fact that when Hispanics come to this country, there's this sort of dichotomy that occurs where we know our race and our color, but we're separated from that and given the label of Hispanic alone. This dichotomy that occurs leaves a lot of us confused. But the truth is that black people are black people no matter where you are. Whether you are black in Germany, whether you are black in Russia, whether you are black in Cuba and Puerto Rico, or whether you are black in the United States, you are black. And this unity must be embraced. And we must teach our children this so they can grow up proud to know their race and their heritage. Now, this is where it gets controversial and sensitive. It's that even though I recognize my heritage, even though I recognize my connection to Africa and my race, it is not the same story as African Americans. And this is what I mean by this. It is often the case that individuals who have roots to Africa, who can relate to being black, will associate or identify with the race for benefits. So if there's something that's going to contribute to the community, so we'll say, yes, we have similar music, we have similar food, we have similar history, things that we can be proud of. But when things get tough, where there are issues of discrimination, then the distinction occurs, and people back up and say, well, I'm not black, I'm Latino. Right? Or if there's going to be injustice with police authority, well, I'm not black, I'm Haitian. Or I'm not black, I'm Nigerian. And that's a real issue here in America, because we cannot just say we're one people when it benefits us and then step away from it when the fight gets real, when we need to stand up with each other. Now, I mentioned earlier, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I recognize I'm not the keynote speaker, and I was asked by Mr. Dye not to go long. I want to touch on certain issues that I think are important, is this, that if we are to unite, then it's important that we're fair. So if we as a people are going to say we're one race, right? We're all black, right? Then when somebody who is of Haitian descent or Dominican descent or Cuban descent rises up in power, then should not the whole community applaud and support? Should not we all say, one of ours got ahead? Yes, one of ours who perhaps speaks Spanish, or one of ours who speaks Creole, or one of ours who speaks a different language. Because that coin can be turned over to the other side. We're not only united when we want to fight together, we should be united when we praise each other in our accomplishments. Now, I know these are tough issues to discuss because when there seems to be injustice, when we look at a body, a governing body, and we say, look, we don't see any African Americans up there, and it's not fair. We should be specific what we're saying here or what we're identifying. We're not saying we don't see people of color up there or people of African descent, because if you have a governing body and you have individuals who are Afro-Latino descent, which is an actual label that you can look up. Those individuals who are from Hispanic countries of African descent. When you see someone there, whether a councilman, a mayor, a freeholder, or assembly member, these are individuals who have African blood in them. These are individuals who have similar heritage. And unless we can acknowledge this, we're not going to move forward in unity. And obviously it goes the other way around. When an individual who is African American rises up in positions, then we should celebrate this as a people. You know, I think I'm gonna close with this controversial statement. I've never taken issue with other races being proud of their races. When I hear people say I'm proud of being white, I've never considered that racism. I don't take any issue with it personally, because I think one should be proud of who you are. You should be proud of your heritage and the heroes of your race. I don't think we should point to another race and say, this race is the reason why we are not proud of ourselves, or the reason why we don't move forward. I think that we should have similar pride. I think we should be able to look at our own race and identify heroes and say, I'm glad that you're proud of your heritage. I'm proud of mine as well. Because when we can be strong, when we can be individually strong and proud of who we are, then we can join with other groups and fight the true injustices of the world. And it takes me back again to looking at the civil rights movement. When I think of those that truly fought against injustice, it was different individuals that came together because they recognized that an injustice against one group is an injustice against all. I don't know if I did justice to what Mr. Dye asked me to speak on regarding Hispanics and Latinos. I didn't want to take away from anyone else's speech. I wanted to talk uniquely and specifically about African history in the Latino community and those who come here and rise up in position and sometimes forget what their heritage are and the similar struggles that we have. But I end with just this. It's a small anecdote that reminds me of why we need to unite. It's a story of two men that go hunting in the woods, and a bear comes out. And he growls out. And one man turns to the other and says, we should run. The other turns to him and says, well, we can't outrun the bear. And the other says, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you. Now he's safe. It's funny. We need to stop trying to outrun each other when the bears of injustice rise up and leave our brothers behind. We need to learn to unite and say injustice against you is injustice against me. Let's take down the bear. I could preach on that, but I won't because Mr. Dye gave me a limited time. I try to touch on a lot of issues.
Just in case anybody was wondering, Freeholder Lora is also a pastor, and he's a phenomenal minister, and I still haven't had a chance yet to come to his church, even though I hear him preach often. and he preaches to me directly. But I would love to sit through one of his phenomenal sermons. Hector mentioned a couple of very valid points. And I think it's important to understand the importance of words and language. The words we use to identify ourselves is important. The words we allow other people to use to identify us is important. And then I want to speak to not language in the sense of different languages or different dialects, but what certain words actually are. I had an opportunity in college. I was a joint major, double major in political science and Africana studies. And Africana studies is the study of the dispersion of African people throughout the world. It's not African American history alone, but it's Afro-Caribbeans, African American. It's about the continent of Africa. It's the dispersion of African people. And for a long time, as an individual growing up, I had trouble identifying who I actually was, because there's so many boxes that you can actually mark. And it's important to understand what they mean. First off, I want to talk real quick on nationality. I'm American. Okay? I was born in America. I'm American. That's my nationality. My ethnicity, this is important. My ethnicity is African American. I'm African American because I'm a descendant of a slave. I cannot identify what country in the continent of Africa my foreparents came from. My experience is uniquely American. My experience is that of a descendant of an African slave who's lost their language, their religion, their family, and only was able to grasp certain aspects of their culture and be able to identify and create a new culture in a new land of America. I'm African American. And I have a conversation sometimes about Barack Obama, and people say, yeah, I'm so proud that Barack Obama is the first African American president. I said, Barack Obama is the first black president. He's not the first African American president. We haven't had one yet. Barack Obama, and I love him, don't get me wrong, that's going to get me to my third point, which is race. We are all black. Okay? So again, my nationality, I'm American. My ethnicity, I'm African American, descendant of an African slave, brought up in cultures uniquely identified with America. But my race is black, and that's what unites us all. And back to Barack Obama. Our great president is not a descendant of an African slave in America. His father is from Kenya. He knows exactly where in Kenya his people came from. Where in the continent of Africa. He knows what language they spoke. He knows what religions they practiced. He's able to track and backtrack his ancestry and his people further than we can. But all of that being said, if he's driving on the wrong street at the wrong time in the wrong car, he's going to get pulled over the same way that I'm going to get pulled over. In the same way that Hector Lora is going to get pulled over. So it's important, again, even though it's important to know what makes us unique, it's extremely important to know what unites us. And our next speaker